Breaking news into our newsroom. Police have just released body camera video that shows the shooting of a 22-year-old Queens man armed with a knife. It shows the moments after the officers entered the home. And Mayor Mamdani said this incident makes the case for changing the way the city responds to mental health calls. But political reporter Marsha Kramer says the mayor admits he's still in the process of figuring out when cops need to be part of the equation.
Hold on. Let's back that up a tad bit because I'm assuming this is right when he entered the house.
Breaking news into our newsroom. Police have just released body camera video that shows the shooting of a 22-year-old Queens man armed with a knife. It shows the moments after the officers entered the home. And Mayor Mamdani said this incident makes the case for changing the way the city responds to mental health calls. But political reporter Marsha Kramer says the mayor admits he's still in the process of figuring out when cops need to be part of the equation.
Quick question. What were, because I'm assuming, because remember we talked about this before, they want social workers to, social worker and mental health advocates to show up first or be along with the cops. What were they supposed to do? It seems like as soon as they entered, the man who's going through a mental health crisis had a knife and was going towards the officers. I don't understand what else they were supposed to do. Is they saying that he wouldn't have killed them, or it was just a? Let's keep going because we might get some more details.
Investigators were seen going in and out of a building in the Briarwood section of Queens last week after police critically shot a 22-year-old wielding a knife. The shooting of Jabaz Chakraborty became a test case of the mayor's resolve to change the way the city responds to cases involving so-called EDPs, emotionally disturbed people. The mayor is saying he had sympathy for the man, whose family sources tell CBS News New York had called 911 asking for an involuntary removal of their son. Jabaz had a history of mental health issues and was throwing glass against a wall.
No family should have to endure this kind of pain.
The mayor is using the incident to speed up his campaign promise to develop a Department of Community Safety where mostly social workers respond to these types of 911 calls.
Jabez needs mental health treatment, not criminal prosecution by a district attorney. And that is why I proposed creating a Department of Community Safety.
During the campaign.
So if they're saying mainly social workers go to the incident, would the social workers have been able to stop him from wielding a knife at them? I'm confused on, this man was clearly carrying a knife and swinging it, trying to get at the cops. So let's keep going.
Mamdani said he would send teams of mental health professionals to respond to 911 calls like this. Today, he said police would also be included if...
When there is a violent situation, such as with a weapon, NYPD will be on the scene.
But I asked the mayor for a clarification about when cops would be sent, because in this case, the 911 call didn't indicate a weapon. How do you determine when the police can arrive if the initial call doesn't say he's got a gun, he's got a knife?
A lot of this is exactly the focus of the conversations that we're having internally in developing out this Department of Community Safety. Additionally, I want to make clear that a person experiencing a mental health episode does not always have to be served first or exclusively by a police officer.
Marsha, any indication of a timeline here, how long it will take the mayor to set up this Office of Community Safety?
Well, it's really unclear, but the mayor said that because of this incident, he's asked his staff to try to speed up the process.
But he campaigned on this during the campaign. He promised that this is going to be a better deal, better for New Yorkers, to keep even officers safe. So what's the holdup?
Well, Christine, there are a lot of scenarios he has to consider, but remember one thing, he wants to get it right, because the last thing he wants to do is see a social worker show up, the scene turns violent, and the person gets injured. But here's the possibility. He could decide to go through the city council, because already Councilman Lincoln Ressler has introduced a bill to set it up, but then he'd have to negotiate with the city council. Now, he could also try to do it by executive order. Either way, he has to find somebody to head the office.
All right, so two avenues as possibilities.
It's a crazy situation. Do I think that there needs to be people around to deal with or to help people who are going through mental issues? Yes. But I don't think you can send them there alone. Especially because you don't know when someone who's going through some of this mental health stuff can turn violent. Now, I'm not saying they will all turn violent, no, but someone needs to be there just in case it does. Because like they said, this call was just a call to get the 21-year-old, 22-year-old removed from the house. And when they showed up, he had a knife and was running at them. The mother was trying to hold him back. What else could have been done? Should a social worker have been there and been like, calm down, let's go through our count backwards from 10, 9, 8? What should have been done? But let's get over into the 911 call to see what else, if we can hear anything about the 911 call.
New at noon, the NYPD has now released the 911 call that led up to the shooting of a man by police in Queens.
Now, police say the call makes it clear the response by officers was necessary, despite concerns by Mayor Mamdani, who says social workers should have responded to what was a mental health crisis.
You can see the man with the knife in his hand. Eyewitness News reporter Crystal Cranmore in the newsroom with the very latest. Crystal.
Good afternoon, David and Sandra. Well, after mounting pressure, we are getting a first listen at that 911 call where the person indicated they wanted involuntary transportation or an ambulance during what they considered to be a mental health episode. But instead, it led to an officer-involved shooting. Take a listen.
And you're requesting EMS, correct? Yes. Is this for male or female, and how old? Male, 22. And what's wrong? Is he violent?
No, not now. He just, he threw his fourth piece of glass. He's not hitting anybody. He just threw glass at, like, the wall.
Is anyone injured?
No.
Any weapons?
No.
He just threw glass at the wall?
Now, in the newly released 911 call, the person states that the 22-year-old Jabez Chakraborty threw his fourth piece of glass at the wall. You also hear that the caller stated that no one was injured and that the 22-year-old
Hold on, go back because they didn't read that last part, which seems very important to me. So the did he threw glass at the wall? The caller says yes. But last time when something like this happened, we called for the cops. And they said we should have called for an ambulance instead. Well, normally both parties respond whenever someone is having a whatever. Okay, what's the first and last name? Okay, so the cops themselves told them that they shouldn't have called. They should have called an ambulance instead.
stated that no one was injured and that the 22-year-old did not have any weapons. Now, this is body cam video released yesterday from when officers responded to the Queens home last week. It appears to show Chakraborty with a knife as family members tried to stop him from moving toward an officer who's accused of firing his gun after giving multiple commands to drop the weapon.
Yeah.
Family saying that they called 911 for an ambulance to provide medical attention to their son, who was in emotional distress. They did not call the police. Now, yesterday, Mayor Mamdani said that he visited the 22-year-old who has lived with schizophrenia for many years. The mayor also questioning the protocols that led up to the shooting and will likely speed up the launch of his Department of Community Safety. That would send social workers to the scene of a mental health crisis rather than police officers.
Now the question is that has to be asked: would he have done this if an EMS officer or a social worker, if anybody else would have came besides the cops? Did he just have it out for the cops, or was it anybody else who entered that house who tried to get him to leave? Would he have came with them with a knife? Now we don't know 100%. All we can go by is what the video we seen now. So tell me your thoughts. Let's keep going.
I proposed creating a Department of Community Safety to build a mental health system rooted in prevention, in sustained care, in real crisis response, so officers no longer have to handle these situations alone. As I've said, when there is a violent situation, such as with a weapon, NYPD will be on the scene. Jabez has lived with schizophrenia for many years, and this situation underscores just how urgently we need a different and more effective mental health response system that will be safer for New Yorkers who struggle with mental health concerns, for their families, and for police officers. Jabez needs mental health treatment, not criminal prosecution.
And the mayor's proposal has been seen as controversial, given the unpredictability of some of these situations. The mayor just wrapping up a press conference moments ago where he said that he and his team are still formulating how the Department of Community Safety will go about handling these different situations.
It's still the question, still the same question. If it wasn't a police officer there, would he have came up with a knife? And if he did still do that, what would they have done? Just ran out the house? But let's go over into the AI breakdown to see if they tell us any more details that we are missing from this whole situation. So as of January 26th, on January 26th, NYPD shot a 22-year-old, I'm not even going to try to say his name, during a mental health crisis at his home in Queens. The incident has sparked significant controversy regarding how the city handles psychiatric emergencies. The family called 911 requesting an ambulance for their son who has lived with schizophrenia for many years. Instead of medical responders, NYPD officers arrived at the scene. So remember, when they called him, they said that he was just throwing glass at the wall. Now, I don't know if EMS should be called, even if because that's a violent act, throwing glass at the wall. I don't know if EMS should be called to get someone like that, but you might feel different. Let's keep going. So, according to the NYPD released body footage, he retrieved a large kitchen knife and advanced towards the officer. Officers reportedly ordered him to drop the weapon and attempted to retreat behind a door, but he was pushed through it, leading an officer to open fire. So he was struck multiple times and remains in critical condition on a ventilator. 2 officers were tested for minor injuries, including tetanus. So the family and advocate groups like Rising Up and Moving, Drum, have criticized the police response as incompetent and inhuman, alleging the officers mistreated the family following the shooting. Okay, so they're saying that they mistreated them following the shooting. They're not saying that the shooting itself was incompetent. Okay, so the mayor's response, we know about that. So Mamdani has called for the creation of the Department of Community Safety to send social workers rather than police to mental health crises. He stated that he needed treatment, not criminal prosecution. And they are currently investigating the shooting. So it's like I said, I don't think you can send social workers alone to mental health crises if something like this. Now, I'm not going to say the police are going to be needed all the time, but you don't know when these situations will turn violent. So you need a backup there to protect the people and everyone else. But so let's see. So the purpose of the Department of Community Safety aims to shift the city's approach to mental health crises from law enforcement-led models to one centered around medical and social services. The following are the key differences between the NYPD response and the proposed DCS model. So currently, armed police officers are often the first to arrive at a mental health 911 call, particularly in neighborhoods like Briarwood, where existing pilot programs are not yet active. So the proposed program dispatches team consisting of social workers, peer expert, and behavioral specialists rather than armed officers. Yeah, no. Because if any of them would have showed up, my thinking is if any of them would have shown up, I think he still would have pulled the knife at them and they would just had to run out. So de-escalation versus command. So the officers are trained to defend themselves and follow protocol that may involve verbal commands backed by threats of force and act like what we've seen. These situations can escalate rapidly when commands are not followed. So the proposed situation focuses on clinical de-escalation, trauma-informed care. The goal is to stabilize the individual through dialogue and professional medical assessments. So officers respond to all 911 calls involving a person with a weapon or perceived threats of violence. So Mayor Mamdani has stated that for the situation involving weapons or active violence, a co-response model would be used. In a scenario, NYPD would still be present for safety, but mental health professionals would lead the interaction whenever possible. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that, but police need to be there. That is my whole thinking. So system integration. So programs like Be Heard currently operate in only 31 precincts and are often unavailable for roughly 60% of calls due to safety criteria and staffing sources. So he would absorb Be Heard and expand it citywide 24/7, removing it from under FDNY and NYPD oversight and placing it within a dedicated civilian agency with a proposed budget of $360 million. So often, so the post, let's say the post-incident approach, so often led to hospitalization or criminal prosecution. That's what's currently happening. And then the proposed thing is prioritize sustained care, community-based treatment over arrest, emphasizing that mental health crises require medical solutions rather than legal consequences. Now, this is a crazy situation no matter how you look at it. Do I think, at the end of the day, it's the whole thing. Do you think that if the officers wouldn't have shown up, he still would have came at them with a knife? If it was a social worker and who all they said they had, who all they wanted there? If they had a social worker, peer experts, and behavior specialists, if they would have showed up, would he have still ran at them with the knife? Would they have been able to talk their way out of it, him walking towards them with a kitchen knife, looking like he's trying to stab them? But that's for y'all to decide. Let me know your thoughts on that whole situation, y'all. Let me know if you disagree with anything I said. The world is a crazy place, and we got to review this stuff together. We have to review this stuff together.